Welcome everybody to the Mental Health and Neuroscience Masterclass. Thank you for being here. On behalf of my colleagues at the University of Sunshine Coast, including those at the University of Sunshine Coast Thompson Institute, welcome. My name is Dan Hermans. I'm Professor of Youth Mental Health and Neurobiology at the Thompson Institute, and I'll be presenting with my colleague, Dr. Chrissy Driver, who's the course coordinator for the Mental Health and Neuroscience program. I should have also mentioned that I'm the program coordinator. Just some housekeeping before we begin. This webinar is being recorded. It's a very popular session. We have over 1,000 registrations, so hopefully a couple of hundred people out there. And I do urge you, if you have questions, to ask them in the chat function. We will have some time at the end to go through those questions, but if we don't get through them all, there are other ways to ask questions, and we'll try to follow up later. So there'll be a form available at the end for you to fill in some questions that we might not have been able to get to or address. There's also going to be a poll in the chat because we're interested in some of the things that you're doing in terms of your background and your profession. Just making sure my slides are working now. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the lands upon which we all gather today. On behalf of the UniSC team, I pay my respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. And I extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples participating in this webinar. I've already mentioned the two speakers you'll be hearing tonight from myself. I'm going to kick things off with a little bit of an introduction of the Thompson Institute, and then hand over to Chrissy, who will be talking about the program in terms of its, especially the content, but also some admission requirements and how people can go about applying. And then after that, I'll be presenting a masterclass. And the focus or topic of that will be around the importance of sleep for mental and cognitive health. So in terms of a summary of the Thompson Institute, for those of you who don't know, it's a mind and neuroscience focused research institute that is addressing some of Australia's most pressing mental health issues. We have a care model whereby we look at or cover clinical advocacy, research, and education across our work there. So in clinics, there's a whole range of clinics that are underway at the Thompson Institute in psychiatry, psychology, healthy brain aging, all the way through to clinical trials. We also have a lot of advocacy from the Institute, public events, training, community and industry partnerships, and a lived experience program informing us about our research agenda in particular. Speaking of research, the main programs we have at the moment are in youth mental health, suicide prevention, aging and dementia, stress-related disorders, eating disorders is a new program we're working on right now. And there's a new facility, a national PTSD center that's being built at the Institute. So a big focus on PTSD going forward. In platforms, I'll tell you more about those in a moment. And finally, in education, of course, a whole range of things from high degree research students to the very important mental health and neuroscience postgraduate program, which you're here to hear more about today. I mentioned the platform, so this is just to demonstrate how across those programs of research at the Institute, we have platforms, we call them, such as imaging and clinical trials and clinical services that run across those research programs, including things like data analytics, and education training, engagement with community and partnerships. That's a whirlwind summary of the Thompson Institute. But now I'd like to show you a video from one of the students we have in the Mental Health and Neuroscience program.
The information that I've learned through this course has been applied into my job many times when it comes to the vulnerable populations, those at risk of mental health and suicide. By studying online, I can still get a postgraduate education while working the job that I love.
As an educator, we certainly are tasked with delivering the curriculum, but we're also tasked with ensuring that the young people are safe and supported.
I'm an advanced care paramedic with Queensland Ambulance Service, and I work as a rural reliever across a lot of regions in Darling Downs. I chose to study neuroscience and mental health at USC because they offered an in-depth background into the neurobiology of mental health to better understand why mental health develops and how to better treat the symptoms and conditions my patients have.
I've obviously got a real vested interest in mental health and neuroscience, having done my background in psychology and then continuing to work with young people each and every day. So I've been able to engage with a lot of the learnings in my current context as a secondary school educator, particularly around mental health and mental illness in adolescence. I work full-time at the moment, so obviously online study was my preferred option. In my classroom teacher role, I teach senior psychology, so I've found that being able to engage with the content in this program has enhanced my practice as a classroom teacher and certainly warrants a lot of interest from my students.
So what I really like about being involved in this program is, first of all, it's one of a kind in Australia. It's the only fully online mental health and neuroscience course. The other aspect I really enjoy is actually getting to see the students, even though it's in an online setting, getting to chat to them and hear about how they're already applying their knowledge in their professions and in their practice.
Studying online means that I don't have to go into uni. I can study from home in my own environment, on my own downtime. Each week we get to have Zoom classes and ask real-time questions and get answers from experts in the field.
The great thing about what the students get to experience in terms of the teaching staff is that we have such a wide range of contributors to the content. So the students get to hear from a variety of experts at the Thompson Institute who are all at the forefront and cutting edge of their research areas. So we have a very multidisciplinary cohort: paramedics, nurses, counsellors, social workers. Everybody's recognising that this is a really important aspect of their work.
As educators, we know that the young people in our care are faced with unprecedented amount of challenges, and having the knowledge and developing this literacy around mental health and neuroscience is invaluable for us educators because it helps us to ensure that the students in our care are well supported.
Studying mental health has been really important for me because as a paramedic I can deliver that frontline care to those in crisis, to be able to help those people who are often misunderstood or stigmatised, to break that barrier and deliver the best possible care that I can.
Thanks for that, Dan. So I'll take over for a little bit now. So as Dan said, my name is Chrissy Driver and I am the course coordinator of the Mental Health and Neuroscience program. So as you can see in this video, we do have a wide range of students from different backgrounds and professions. So as well as teachers and paramedics, some of the other professionals that we currently have in our courses are health workers, such as lots of allied health workers, speech pathologists, exercise physiologists, dietitians, OTs, mental health clinicians, counsellors, AODs, support workers, social workers, psychologists, chiropractors, nurses, naturopaths, etc. But we also have students from a range of backgrounds as well, things like environmental science, conservation, biomedical science, high performance sport, school guidance counsellors, youth education, suicide prevention, people from the business sector, including public relations and crisis management, business consultancy, workplace health and safety, government and policy, and the list goes on. So we do have a huge variety of backgrounds in our students. But what they all have in common is a passion to help those people that they come across in their personal and professional lives who may be struggling with mental health concerns. So we are seeing a range of professions who are all recognising that having this mental health and neuroscience literacy is really important to enhance their current practice or profession. So as you're probably aware, the topic of mental health is becoming increasingly relevant no matter what field you're in. So for you guys here, whether you want to expand your career horizons, start a career in emerging research fields, or go on to higher degree by research as well, or be applying your mental health support to your current career, then this program is actually applicable to a wide range of multidisciplinary fields. Okay, so the way this program is run, it is a nested program, and we currently have a graduate certificate, diploma, and a master's, which is starting next year, actually. So the graduate certificate and graduate diploma have actually been approved to have Commonwealth supported places, and this is excellent news because this drastically reduces the cost of these courses. We do know that postgraduate study is expensive, so that is really great news for our students who want to apply now. We do have Commonwealth supported places for those courses. So the nested program means that, for example, if you wanted to start in the grad cert, which is the 4 courses that you can see on the screen there behind the poll, I believe, you can sort of get a taster of the content before you then commit to the graduate diploma. Then if you decide you want to continue, you can then upgrade to the graduate diploma, and you just complete those extra 4 courses that are also on the slide, which makes a total of 8 courses. But of course, you can apply straight into the graduate diploma if that's something that you're really keen to do as well, which is the full 8 courses. As I said, the master's is starting next year, so early 2024. And this will culminate in a research focus. So this actually includes a supervised thesis using secondary data, conducting data analysis, and manuscript writing, and hopefully for publication. So the idea of this is to give you an alternative pathway to high degree by research if this is something that you're interested in. Again, you can start in the graduate certificate first and work your way up, and then move on to the master's after you've done the grad dip. Or you can apply straight into the master's, and we do have applications open for the master's currently as well. Just note the eligibility criteria is slightly different for the graduate certificate, diploma, and then the master's, and I'll go over that shortly. So the grad cert is currently offered part-time, so that's you can do 2 courses per semester, but the graduate diploma, you are able to complete this full-time if you like. So we do have the full 4 courses available per semester. But as I said, you can also do that part-time. And we have, students that do a range of number of courses a semester, anything from 1 course per semester to the full 4. And you can basically choose which courses you start with. There's no designated order to do these courses in for the grad cert and grad dip. And you can also start in any semester, so semester 1 or semester 2. The master's is slightly different in that you will need to complete all of the 8 graduate diploma courses first before you can then move on to those final courses that delineate that from the grad dip. So that's the research principles, the literature review, and the supervised thesis. So I'll go through some of the content that you can expect in these courses soon, but also you do get a little taster module that you will get after this webinar, so you can see what our modules actually look like. Okay, next slide, Dan. So we do, sorry, I'm just going to move the poll because for me it's right in front of the slides. Can everybody, I just want to check that everyone else can see the slides. Okay, so we do get asked a lot of questions about what's a relevant prerequisite degree. So I'm going to go through some of those with you now so you get a better understanding of what the eligibility might be. So there are many relevant undergraduate degrees, obviously, such as health, science, psychology, etc. And these sorts of degrees are helpful in terms of the foundational skills and knowledge, but we do also consider people with degrees that aren't as related as those topics. So far, we've had a number of students without these types of degrees who have still been very successful, and those, as successful as those who have kind of what seems to be a more relevant degree. The thing that we have found is it might be a steeper learning curve for the people that don't have a solid science background or a health or psychology background, but this doesn't mean that's impossible. So as I said before, we've had students from a variety of backgrounds, and we're also interested in finding out, as well if you have any vocational or work experience in mental health, and also why you might want to do this course. So if you don't feel you have a relevant degree, you can also submit a statement to let us know those types of things. So if you don't have a science background, allied health, psychology, and medical sciences are helpful because, as I said, the content is ultimately neuroscience orientated. But we do actually have a lot of scaffolding. We take a lot of time to make sure that we build that basic understanding around the brain, and we do that early on. And so the neuroscience components are focused on then being applied in that mental health context. So we do give a lot of background information, a lot of extra resources. So if you don't have that sort of deep understanding, you can use those extra resources to get yourself up to speed. So we do also need to point out that we're not expecting students to come away knowing everything about the brain at the end of this course. And Dan and I will be the first to tell you that we still learn new things about the brain all the time. Neuroscience is a massively growing area of research and knowledge at the moment, which is why it's so exciting to be involved in this. And it's also a great time to be involved in a course like this because we are learning so much still. Some students do find it a bit tricky to begin with because neuroscience is like a whole new language, but it will become more normal as you progress through the courses. And I think you will start to notice some themes across the content, especially in terms of relevant brain regions and networks. In terms of assessments as well, they are more about, I guess, critical thinking skills and science communication, presenting balanced arguments based on the evidence base, as opposed to lots of rote learning about different parts of the brain or just sort of writing generic essays. So in what we're doing with that is we're trying to give our students, our graduates, the foundational skills in how to use your knowledge that you've learned, rather than just learning lots of information that may not have that applied focus. So we do get asked a lot, what are the career pathways? So in terms of career pathways, at this stage, the courses don't have accreditation statuses for colleges or societies, but this is something that we would like to get to one day. But what I can say is that our current students are giving us lots of examples as how they're using these qualifications to benefit their current careers. So, for example, the assistant principal that was featured in the video that we saw, teaching senior psychology and drawing on that course content to be more across the neurobiological aspects of psychology, but also to enhance his understanding of the current mental health issues facing youth in his school. And this has enabled him to be able to better support his students, but also his teachers. For our other students, it's becoming about more specialised in their current practice. So, for example, with our psychologists, counsellors, social workers, paramedics, nurses, OTs, etc., and other health practitioners, this mental health and neuroscience knowledge has really given them more experience to be able to recognise mental health signs in their clients and to better help those with those types of concerns. And basically, this all aids in giving them a better understanding of their clients' needs from a holistic perspective. We're finding that other students are using their qualifications to go for promotion or advance their careers. We're finding that employees are seeing the skills they have and the training that they have in this area and how that can be applied in their current professions. We're finding also there's obviously the personal and professional application of knowledge, but also our students are using the qualifications to enhance their resumes when applying for more senior positions or moving into more mental health and wellbeing focused roles within their organisation. It really is just another string to their bows, I guess. So there is an increased confidence in our graduates that comes with the increased mental health and neuroscience literacy. And because so many organisations now value this health and wellbeing knowledge, having employees with this knowledge is really preparing their workforce for the future in terms of skills. Obviously, finally, we also, you can use this as a pathway to higher degree by research, particularly if you go on to do the master's component as well. So applications obviously are open for semester 1, and semester 1 starts at the end of February. So if you are wanting to apply, there is still plenty of time. Okay. All right, so I'm going to talk you through just quickly how the program kind of works. So Dan, if we can move on to the program content slide and the one after that. Perfect, thank you. So yes, we are a fully online self-paced course. With that in mind, we do sit within the UniSC's usual semester dates, meaning that we offer 13 weeks of content. But being fully online, the courses are self-paced in that you can choose when you do your study. So the only deadlines you have to deal with are the assessments, but essentially you can pick and choose when you do your study and how. For those of you who do want a bit more structure, you do hear from me, the course coordinator, regularly, and you can choose to follow along week by week if you like. The university does recommend that you put about 10 to 12 hours per week into a course. That's a very rough guide. And in terms of what we deliver for our content, this entails roughly sort of 3 to 4 hours of that talk content in the modular format, which I'll talk you through in a moment. So for us, this includes things like core concept components and reading. And then the rest of that allocated time is self-study and working on assessments. So with our online courses, you can obviously structure this in a way that suits your work and life commitments. Our modules are designed to take about a couple of hours to complete and longer if you want to engage in all the post core concept activities. We have a number of activities that you can engage in, which help you consolidate your learning and also help you to start preparing for the assessment items. So in that sort of 10 to 12 hours per week guidelines, any additional time within that is your self-study and assessment work. So as I briefly mentioned before about our assessments being a little bit different, they do generally focus on interpretation of the most recent evidence base for a specific topic, and then critical evaluation and synthesis of this type of content. So we are really encouraging the skills of science communication through our assessment with various styles of writing and presenting, rather than just testing your knowledge through lots of multiple choice exams or standard essay writing. So we do want to send you out with the skills to communicate and apply your knowledge in a variety of settings rather than just remembering the content. Most of our students do tend to work either part-time or full-time, so many have chosen to study part-time, which is anything from 1 to 2 courses per semester. But we do have some that do work full-time. Still on the previous slide, thanks, Dan. So the feedback tends to be that this is a better way to pace your learning, and allows our students to focus on the content in more depth, and therefore provides, I guess, more opportunity to apply your new knowledge in your current practice straight away. And this is great because ultimately this encourages lifelong learning. But we do also have students who do manage a full-time load. So it's really up to you to think about how much time you think you can allocate to study over the period of the semester. Our content is delivered by a huge range of researchers, clinicians, and educators, as we saw in the video, who are at the forefront of their areas. So you don't just hear from the same lecturer for every topic. The wide variety of contributors enables us to deliver the most current and evidence-based content. So this also gives us the opportunity to provide this unique blend of applied mental health and neuroscience content coming directly from the experts who are working and researching in this space. So just to clarify, these courses are not mental health with a little sprinkling of neuroscience. They are very much a balanced blend of mental health and that applied neuroscience. So as you'll hear from Dan later in the masterclass, understanding the brain is crucial to helping us better understand mental health in general and how we can maximize diagnosis and treatment of mental disorders. So that's really what makes our program quite different to other mental health programs, in that we do have that balanced blend of mental health and neuroscience. And as I said in the video, it's one of a kind currently in Australia, fully online. Okay. Next one, thanks, Dan. So our content is delivered in a very unique way, in that we don't have this traditional 2-hour recorded lecture format. Yes, there are 13 weeks of teaching and each week contains a module of content, but this is broken up into different styles of learning materials, and this caters for many learning styles and learning needs. So in terms of how it's delivered, we have an amazing multimodal design rather than a traditional recorded lecture. So what you will typically find in a module of content is this. So we generally have some readings to start off with, and this sets the scene for the module. This is not textbook-based learning. This is coming from mostly peer-reviewed journal articles that have recently been published. Then we have the core concepts component, which is the type of content that would usually be covered in a 1 to 2 hour lecture, but this is delivered in a multimodal format. So this includes a mix of text to read, images, graphs, little pre-recorded mini lectures, other videos that often help to explain the concepts, such as things like 2-minute neuroscience videos, which is a great resource. I encourage you to go have a look at it if you're thinking of doing this course. It's got some great little, as it says, 2-minute neuroscience videos. But also links to other resources like lots of conversation articles and interactive activities that you're able to then self-check your understanding in terms of the content as you move through the modules. So there are a range of interactive activities that that will help consolidate your learning and build towards assessment items. I guess this this section of activities makes up the type of things that you would normally do in an in-class tutorial or workshop. But these activities being online are self-paced, and you can choose how much you interact with your peers, the course coordinator, and these activities. That's really up to you. We can do this via discussion boards, comments on videos, and as I said, those self-check activities. We do also have regular Zoom drop-in sessions with me, the course coordinator, and this provides you the opportunity also to meet your peers, to collaborate and discuss the concepts and ask questions that you might have about the assessments. So whilst these courses are fully online, you do hear from me regularly, and you have multiple opportunities to connect with me and your peers, which is super important, to connect with your peers to discuss the content. But we do know that at the same time, if you're a more autonomous learner, there really is no obligation to engage in any of the interactive or Zoom-based activities, as the content that we provide to you gives all learners the opportunity to access all the information in a way that you'll be able to succeed in the course. So you don't have to do all the interacting if you don't want to. Next slide. So this is just a little taster of some of the pictures that we use for our modules, and can sort of give you an idea of the variety of modules that we have. And now I'm just very quickly going to go through and talk to you about the different courses that we have, and just give you a really brief overview of the 8 different courses. So next slide, thanks, Tim. So these courses are what you'll find in the graduate certificate. So we've got mental health and neuroscience translational research. So what we're looking at here is, so across the lifespan, we know that mental disorders differ in their onset, type, and complexity. So current diagnostic approaches and treatments remain pretty limited, and in some aspects are lacking. So in this course, we actually focus on the translational research to better understand mental disorders and optimal treatments, and how the latest scientific research findings are actually put into practice. So you'll explore recent and novel approaches to diagnosis, such as staging models, and treatments such as transcranial magnetic stimulation, ketamine, and things like EEG neurofeedback. The next course, which is Youth Mental Health and Neurobiology. So we know that adolescence is a dynamic period of significant physical changes, cognitive, social development, and emotional maturation, but it can also be a really difficult period as the brain undergoes significant structural and functional changes. We also know that half of mental health conditions actually emerge by the age of 14 years. So the need for understanding adolescent neurobiology is huge. So in this course, we do investigate the neurobiology of the disorders that emerge in adolescence. And there is a focus on specialised youth mental health services, as well as key factors, including things like social connectedness, digital life and cyberbullying, and sleep-wake patterns. So in this course, we do cover all the main issues that arise during adolescence. Then we've got our most technical course, which is Neuroimaging Advances in Mental Health. So in this one, don't worry, you're not expected to learn about all the intricacies of brain imaging, but we do learn about magnetic resonance imaging, or MRI, and we use this as it allows researchers to understand how the brain is wired in health and disease. So in this course, we just introduce you to the latest imaging technologies used in mental health and neuroscience research, and there is a focus on MRI. We do also explore TMS again, magnetic resonance spectroscopy, and EEG techniques, and how all these things are actually used in AI and machine learning. So you'll understand the role of neuroimaging biomarkers in mental health for things like risk profiling, diagnosis and treatment, and then how neuroimaging supports the pursuit of knowledge, particularly in the mental health context. Finally, the last course of the graduate certificate is suicide prevention. So I'm sure you're all aware that suicide is a significant, complex public health problem. And for people aged 15 to 44, suicide is actually the leading cause of death, and its impacts on communities are far-reaching. So in this course, you will learn about the theories of suicide, as well as the current evidence base around its neurobiology, but also the innovations in assessment and suicide prevention. So there is an emphasis on this course in the integration of policy and person-centered practices and care, and also the role of the community in suicide prevention. We'll also explore approaches to preventing suicide in at-risk groups and different vulnerable populations. So now if we have a look at the other 4 courses that then make up the graduate diploma. We've got healthy brain aging. So you're going to hear a little bit about dementia later on in Dan's masterclass, but dementia is a major cause of disability among older people, with about 10 million new cases per year worldwide. Now, healthy aging is accompanied by changes that impact cognition and behavior, but there is a spectrum of declining cognitive function, with normal aging at one end and diseases such as mild cognitive impairment and then dementia at the severe end. So in this course, we'll address the neurobiological changes in these diseases. We do also look at how lifestyle factors can actually protect against dementia risk by up to 50%. So you will also learn how lifestyle interventions can actually prevent their onset and progression of these types of diseases. Very exciting research in that space. The next course, neurocognition and mental health. So neurocognition is the understanding of how thinking skills such as attention, memory, and decision-making are specifically linked to certain underlying brain regions, networks, and processes. So neurocognition has actually been utilized to better understand the functional impacts of various mental illnesses, including in their very early stages. So in this course, you'll learn how a diverse range of cognitive functions, such as affective regulation, metacognition, and social cognition, play key roles in current mental health research and how these measures provide insights into the underlying neurobiology. Then we've got stress-related disorders. So in terms of stress, we know that this promotes vulnerability to or even exacerbates symptoms of most mental illnesses. And stress-related disorders actually result from an atypical response to anxiety due to physical, mental, or emotional stress. Post-traumatic stress disorder can develop if feelings of fear, anger, and depressed mood persist after exposure to a traumatic event. So you'll explore how atypical responses to trauma lead to disorders and how brain changes manifest into these debilitating symptoms. So for most, the current treatments for PTSD are not effective. So you'll also explore some of the emerging evidence behind novel therapies. So we do have a focus on PTSD in this course. And with our new National PTSD Research Centre kicking off next year, we're hoping to get some awesome new research insights from there too. So finally, we've got lifestyle factors. So we know that nutrition, physical activity, sleep, substance use, stress management, and social networks, and the environment are all lifestyle factors that shape and impact mental health and well-being. Now, lifestyle interventions and behaviours are actions that you can actually modify or change to improve our mental health and our brain health. So in this course, we'll cover the emerging evidence base in lifestyle medicine and explore ways this approach can actually be adopted as an early intervention strategy, as well as how it can supplement other therapies in the treatment of mental health disorders. Now, after this webinar, you're going to get a little taster version of one of our modules, where we'll actually give you a snippet from each of these 8 courses that I've covered. So for now, that concludes the information from me about the MHN courses that we offer. I see there are a lot of questions in the chat, so we'll try and get to those at the end, but I'll quickly pass over, sorry Dan, I probably talked too long, to Professor Daniel Hermans, who's going to talk you through his amazing masterclass on the importance of sleep.
Oh, can you hear me? Great. Thanks, Chrissy. Okay, in this masterclass, we're going to explore the importance of sleep for mental and cognitive health. The content is from various modules across different courses within our program. To set the scene, all MHN modules start with a blurb like this. The relationship between sleep and mental health is now well established. More recently, the impact of circadian rhythms on both sleep and mental health has piqued the interest of researchers and clinicians as a significant underlying contributor of the world's growing mental health epidemic. Then we touch on a list of learning outcomes and proceed with the module content. As Chrissy mentioned, we curate content from a wide variety of sources, including articles from the conversation. This 2015 piece addresses the links between sleep and mental health. It covers the biology of sleep and the role of the 24-hour circadian rhythms. That is, our physiology, metabolism, and behavior are all aligned according to internal clocks, which enable our bodily functions to occur at the right times. When awake, our energy expenditure is high, and thus our organs need to be prepared for the intake of water and nutrients. During sleep, although energy expenditure and digestive processes decrease, many essential activities occur in the brain, including cellular repair, toxin clearance, memory consolidation, and information processing. More on this later. Disruptions to our circadian rhythms can break down internal synchronization with major impacts on our health, as summarized in this table. Many of these impacts involved mental and cognitive health factors. Previously, despite its prevalence in mental illness, sleep disruption was thought to be a result of social isolation, lack of employment, and/or medication. However, researchers now suggest that mental illness and sleep disruption share common pathways in the brain. Indeed, sleep abnormalities have been identified in individuals prior to the onset of mental illnesses, including depressive, bipolar, and psychotic disorders. Additionally, studies have shown that treating sleep problems can be an effective means to reduce symptoms. Increasingly, sleep and circadian rhythm disruptions are seen as important factors in the early diagnosis of individuals with mental illness. While circadian rhythms are seen mainly in bodily functions such as body temperature, hormone secretion, and digestion, the most obvious circadian rhythm is the sleep-wake cycle. Circadian rhythm sleep-wake disorders occur because of a misalignment between the timing of the endogenous or inbuilt circadian rhythms and the light-dark cycle of the external environment. A zeitgeber is the name given to any external cue that can be used to entrain the circadian clock. The most powerful zeitgeber is the light-dark cycle. Other zeitgebers include food and temperature, although they are not nearly as strong. The sleep-wake cycle is determined by two complementary processes, the circadian rhythm and the homeostatic sleep drive. The latter builds up over around 16 hours until you feel the need to sleep. During wakefulness, adenosine, a marker of energy expenditure, steadily accumulates in brain regions associated with maintaining wakefulness. During sleep, adenosine is cleared away, ready to start the cycle again upon waking. Because adenosine buildup is largely responsible for increasing sleep pressure throughout the day, it follows that addressing circadian rhythm alignment issues impacts the homeostatic drive, particularly the timing of this process. On average, the human circadian rhythm is slightly longer than 24 hours. It's estimated that the natural human rhythm is closer to 24 hours and 11 minutes. This means that daily photo entrainment via exposure to bright light at the right time is required to keep our circadian rhythms aligned with the external environment and to avoid drifting later and later each day. The master clock that synchronizes the endogenous circadian rhythm is the suprachiasmatic nucleus, or SCN, shown here in the left panel. Upon seeing early morning light, excitation of SCN neurons speeds up and entrains the circadian clock to the day-night cycle. Other zeitgebers, such as food and temperature, help maintain peripheral clocks in the gut, liver, pancreas, muscle, and adipose tissue, which all regulate overall circadian rhythms via neural, behavioral, and endocrine signals. When the SCN detects the dark, a signal is sent to the pineal gland, which then secretes the hormone melatonin. This informs the body that it is time to prepare for sleep. Orally administered melatonin can have similar effects on the circadian rhythm as light exposure. As mentioned, there are strong associations between sleep and circadian disruptions and mental disorders. Thus, improving sleep via the stabilization of circadian rhythms is vital to improving mental health. I'll now briefly summarize some specific mental disorders and their links with circadian and sleep disturbances. Seasonal affective disorder is a condition of regularly occurring depression associated with winter, particularly in places where winter daylight hours are very short. Artificial bright light therapy can realign the circadian rhythm and treat SAD. More than 90% of people with depression have sleep complaints. The link between sleep disturbance and depression is quite strong. And successful treatments, including bright light therapy, wake therapy, and antidepressants, tend to directly impact the circadian rhythm. Bipolar disorder sleep disturbances include hyper and hyposomnia. So the latter is the decreased need for sleep during mania, with studies linking bipolar disorder to a fast-running circadian clock. Lithium, the most prescribed treatment, has been shown to stabilize the circadian rhythm and improve symptoms. Schizophrenia is associated with multiple circadian disturbances, including delayed, non-24-hour, and irregular sleep-wake rhythm disorders, which worsen with symptom severity. Stabilization of nighttime sleep with melatonin supplementation can reduce symptoms. Shift work results in a chronic misalignment of circadian rhythm, and this increases the likelihood of depression, psychosis, risk-taking behavior, and substance use. Sleep's role in memory and learning also plays a part in the development of mental disorders. One study showed a 40% reduction in memory retention in participants who underwent 36 hours of controlled sleep deprivation. Importantly, the largest impact was on their ability to recall positive emotional memories, while negative and neutral emotional memories were more resistant to sleep deprivation. The fast electrical activity of the hippocampus facilitates processing and sorting of memories collected throughout the day. The hippocampus then sends different memories to the outer layers of the brain, or neocortex, which is primarily achieved via slow-wave electrical activity during sleep. The neocortex effectively and carefully stores memories for the longer term. Sleep has also been linked to the size of the hippocampus and therefore memory efficiency and capacity. This data is from a study of 290 Japanese youths aged 5 to 18 years. And it shows a strong correlation between the size of the hippocampus and duration of sleep, whereby those who spent more time sleeping had larger hippocampi. The researchers suggested that sleep may be necessary for neurogenesis and reorganization, and accordingly, a healthy, more efficient hippocampus. The average sleep duration in this study was 8.6 hours. So in youth, less than 8 hours of sleep on a regular basis could have impacts on brain health. Age-related differences in sleep-wake cycles are very important and may underlie key determinants of brain and mental health outcomes. Around pubertal onset, adolescents undergo significant physiological alterations in their circadian rhythms and sleep patterns. That is, independent of sleep homeostatic pressure, adolescents have a strong tendency to stay up later than children do, owing to a delay in their circadian timing of sleep and spontaneous morning waking. This circadian-driven change persists until around 21 years of age and then declines across adulthood. Crucially, the interplay between circadian phase delay and early school start times often results in many adolescents being severely sleep deprived during the week and trying to catch up sleep on the weekends. And this may play a key role in the onset of mental health problems or even disorders that typically emerge in adolescence. Now, let's consider older age. Sleep disturbance is a symptomatic hallmark of Alzheimer's disease. For those with this dementia, sleep is more fragmented with increased daytime napping, reduced non-REM slow-wave sleep, and poorer sleep efficiency. Indeed, disturbed sleep may be the first observable symptom of Alzheimer's, with circadian rhythm dysfunction evident in around 50% of patients. Sleep disturbances tend to progress in parallel with cognitive decline. Alzheimer's neuropathology occurs in brain regions involved in the regulation of sleep, as well as memory and learning processes. Persistent alterations in sleep patterns affect disease progression, leading to the accumulation of amyloid beta, remember that protein name, and tau aggregates, eventually causing plaques in the brain that block neurotransmission and increase neuroinflammation. Let's now look at the brain system that may help with such pathology. As you would understand and appreciate, the brain is a very active, busy organ, using up lots of energy and performing complex tasks over and over. Have you ever thought of what happens to the byproducts of brain function? Well, just like the rest of our body, the brain needs to cleanse itself on a regular basis. The way the brain does this, however, is unlike that in the rest of the body. As you'd probably recall from high school biology, the brain has its own sewerage system called the lymphatic system, which is a network of vessels that transport fluid called lymph throughout the body to nodes where it is filtered. We now know, and from research only around 10 years ago, that the brain has its own glial-dependent waste clearance pathway, and it's called the glymphatic system, which also removes waste products, but in a rather different way to the lymphatic system. Due to lots of metabolic activity each day, the human brain generates a considerable amount of biological debris, including toxic protein waste products like amyloid beta. Over the course of 1 year, the waste accumulated by the brain is equivalent to its own total weight, that is around 1.4 kilos. If aggregates of protein form in the brain and are not cleared away, they may cause irreparable harm. As mentioned before, this is what we think happens in Alzheimer's dementia. The glymphatic system addresses this by essentially piping cerebrospinal fluid, CSF, throughout the brain to remove toxic protein waste. Driven by blood flow, CSF collects waste materials and transport it out of the brain into the lymphatic system. Brain cells called astrocytes, star-shaped brain cells, as pictured here on the right, are key to the unique way in which the glymphatic system clears waste. Amazingly, the brain's plumbing system remained mysterious until 2012, when the first study to demonstrate its function was published. So Jeffrey Iliff and colleagues knew that CSF played a key role in the way the brain clears waste, what they called interstitial solutes, but they needed to prove how. They did this by conducting specialized imaging and genetic studies in mice. First, they demonstrated a brain-wide pathway whereby CSF flows in along the vascular spaces adjacent to arteries and then passes through the brain's interstitial space, that is the space between neurons and other cells, which is then cleared via drainage pathways adjacent to the veins. This process is greatly facilitated by a protein called aquaporin 4, or AQP4, which helps to drive the clearance of these solutes. Iliff and colleagues found that, compared to wild-type mice, those that lacked the AQP4 gene had much slower CSF influx and 70% less waste clearance. Importantly, Iliff and colleagues also showed that amyloid beta, the protein I mentioned before implicated in Alzheimer's disease, was transported this way, and that deletion of the AQP4 gene suppressed the clearance of amyloid beta. Given the initial discoveries of the way CSF clears the brain waste from the brain, researchers speculated that sleep difficulties in dementia may not necessarily be a side effect, but rather a contributor to the disease process itself. In 2013, Xi and colleagues tested this hypothesis that amyloid beta clearance is increased during sleep, and that, the sleep-wake cycle regulates lymphatic clearance. Remarkably, they observed that while CSF levels were very low during the wake state, within minutes of sleep, onset, the CSF influx rose dramatically. Another critical finding of this study was that during the sleep state, the mice had a 60% increase in the interstitial space. This was evidence that during sleep, the flow of glymphatic, it's difficult to say sometimes, glymphatic fluid is enhanced due to an expansion of space in the brain, allowing faster and more efficient removal of waste. Xi and colleagues concluded that the restorative function of sleep may be due to the switching of the brain into a functional state that facilitates the clearance of degradation products of neural activity that accumulate during wakefulness. More recent research shows that CSF influx depends on the magnitude of slow-wave EEG activity during sleep, while other studies demonstrate that the neuromodulator norepinephrine has a suppressive effect on glymphatic system. It's also known that inhibition of norepinephrine promotes sleep. Thus, it is suggested that glymphatic waste clearance is optimal when both slow-wave brain activity is high and norepinephrine levels are low, a state typically induced during non-REM sleep. Thus, medications or interventions that promote or lead to these conditions or brain states may be crucial in ameliorating the impacts of reduced glymphatic influx. Following studies about brain changes in interstitial volumes, researchers then examined whether body, and more specifically head posture, during sleep affects the efficiency of waste removal. Lee and colleagues in 2015 tracked CSF changes in sleeping mice when they were either lying in positions that were prone, that is on their stomach, supine on their back, or lateral on their side. They found that glymphatic transport was most efficient in the lateral position. Also, compared to the prone position, most like the awake state, the lateral and supine positions showed significant more clearance of amyloid beta. Lee and colleagues proposed that this most popular and natural sleep position, that is, head resting on the side, has evolved to optimize waste removal during sleep. Crucially, these findings need to be tested in humans. Other research demonstrates that mice given activity to running wheel for 5 weeks showed more than twofold increase in glymphatic flow compared to mice who remained sedentary. Interestingly, the glymphatic influx was low while the mice were engaging in exercise, but there was a post-exercise increase while they were awake, suggesting that exercise and sleep are both independent and powerful drivers of waste disposal in the brain. A recent review of lifestyle factors concluded that since diet is important in maintaining vascular health, it also has a key role in the brain's ability to clear waste products. Mice with omega-3 fatty acid-rich diets showed increased CSF influx and clearance. Also, transgenic mice expressing increased levels of omega-3 fatty acids in the brain showed protection against neuronal death that was associated with increased amyloid beta levels. The evidence regarding the effects of alcohol use on glymphatic system is more complex. While high levels of alcohol consumption have disruptive effects at the cellular level and also in terms of disrupting sleep patterns, low levels of alcohol appear to have some beneficial effects on glymphatic function. I hope that this masterclass has highlighted the following key things. Firstly, the relationship between sleep and mental health is well established. Increasingly, it is understood that mental illness and sleep disruption share common pathways in the brain. Furthermore, circadian disturbances are common in mental disorders, and management of sleep-wake cycles is crucial to mental health, with interventions that or treatments that target exposure to light-dark hues or melatonin onset being key to this. We've also discovered that sleep-wake cycles change throughout the lifespan, and that while many of these changes are normal, disruptions to sleep-wake cycles and circadian rhythms during key stages or over protracted periods of time can have major impacts. Then there is the age-old question: what is the functional value of sleep? That is, why do animals regularly go into a biological state of great vulnerability, a state of reduced environmental awareness, and thereby a decreased ability to protect oneself against predators and other harms. Well, this seems to be because sleep serves a fundamental biological benefit, and its role in consolidating memories and in clearing the brain of its daily metabolic waste products are biological necessities. I think it's amazing that the functions of the glymphatic system were relatively unknown prior to 2012. And in the past decade, a tremendous amount of research into this system has been achieved, although studies in humans are lacking. And it will be fascinating to see these emerge in the not too distant future. As an example of where this research is heading, a study very recently, 2023, by Zhang and colleagues investigated glymphatic function in Alzheimer's disease using an imaging technique that quantified the perivascular space, that is, the glymphatic system pipelines. Compared to controls, patients with Alzheimer's showed significantly lower perivascular space across the brain, as shown here on the left. Furthermore, decreased perivascular space was correlated with poorer performance in language-based memory tests, shown on the right, as well as reduced processing speed and working memory. It's important to note that this study assessed participants when they were awake, and they did not measure associations with sleep. Finally, I hope that this masterclass has also highlighted that lifestyle factors interrelate, and they have both independent and interactive impacts on brain and mental health, with, in my view, sleep chief among them. So, want to know more? Well, by enrolling in our program, you can discover and learn about many more topics like this at the intersection of mental health and neuroscience. Hopefully, this masterclass has demonstrated to you how our postgraduate program very much, as Chrissy said before, incorporates neuroscience research to best understand mental health conditions. And in doing so, helps us all to find new solutions for their prevention and treatment. Thank you very much for your interest. And I think we've got some time and we're happy to go over time for questions.
Yep, thanks, Dan. I do have a bunch of questions for us to get through. So I'll go through them one by one and I'll palm them off to you if need be. Dan, I just want to let you all know, I'm not sure if you could see the results, but we had 21% of you from health, 26% from allied health, 23% from psychology and counselling, 2% from science, 6% from government, 15% education, and 6% business. So that's really exciting to see so many different professions represented here tonight, and that you all have this interest in mental health and neuroscience as much as we do. So thank you so much for coming along. So we'll get through the questions now. Feel free to duck away if you need to, but we'll try and get through them quickly so that you can all get some answers to them. So first question is, does the course allow you to register with bodies or associations? So at the moment, as I said, we don't have that in place, but it's something that we're looking to do hopefully in the future. Would we recommend this course to new graduate social work practitioners? Absolutely. I think going into a job like that, you would be using a lot of your knowledge on a daily basis. We have had quite a few social workers do our course in various different areas, so youth, aged care and disability support, all those types of things. And we've found that they are using their knowledge straight away. And I guess that's one of the good things of doing this course alongside working in your current profession, is that you get to take that knowledge and apply it on a daily basis. We've got a master's related question, which is there fluidity in your choice of thesis abstract? So Dan, would you like to quickly address that one in terms of how the supervision component will work, just really quickly?
Yeah, thanks, Chrissy. I guess, there's always fluidity. But in saying that, there will be a list of topics available, because when we roll out that aspect of the program, the research activity component, that is, there will be a number of research focused academics at the Thompson Institute in particular, and also the broader University of Sunshine Coast, who specialize in certain areas and therefore would have specific topics. Yeah, we'll try to be as fluid as possible and offer a wide variety of topics, but they probably will in the first couple of years very much reflect those research themes. Excuse me, now my voice is failing, and platforms that I mentioned before.
Yeah. Great, I'll take over, Dan. Yeah, so these projects will be sort of, I guess, pre-specified based on the the current projects that we have here at the TI, and it will of course be mostly secondary data analysis, and the supervision component will be obviously online. So yeah, there's a bit of fluidity within the constraints of the research topics that are currently our focus here or broader at UniSC. So I hope that answers the question. What are the expected contact hours for the course? As I said, in terms of contact hours, it's really up to you whether you want to come along to the Zoom sessions or not. They're not every week, but they are very frequent in the courses. So in terms of the expected hours, I guess contact hours, it's up to you. Then it's just working through the modules at your own pace when is comfortable for you during that week. Or, we have some students that will do, a chunk of modules at the end of during one weekend, knowing that they've got work commitments for the next couple of weeks. So in terms of the timing, how long and when and how often, it's really up to you to kind of pace yourself through the content. And you've got that option to join along in terms of a weekly focus, or just fitting it in when is best for your work schedule. So the live and interactive classes, so the Zoom classes, we've trialed a lot of different times. We've done some during the day and some in the evening, and now we just do both. So when we have those Zoom sessions, I do try and offer them a during the day option and an evening option. So hopefully that one of those times will fit around people's work commitments. Generally, the student-led Zoom sessions are recorded, so if you can't make them, then we do record them, particularly when we're talking about assessment items and things like that. If you do the grad dip, can you do any 8 courses in any order? Yes. So there are 4 courses offered each semester. So if you started in semester 1, for example, you can choose between translational research, youth mental health and neurobiology, stress-related disorders and lifestyle factors. So they're all an offer in semester 1. So those of you starting in February next year, you can choose from those 4. And then the second semester, the 4 options are the remainder ones, which healthy brain aging, suicide prevention, neuroimaging, and neurocognition and mental health. So they're all offered in semester 2. So it's a case of just sort of working through those 8 in whatever order fits for your semester. If you do want a bit more guidance in terms of order, I think someone has asked, what is the best order to do them in? I can have a chat to you about that based on your background as well, and suggest which courses might be beneficial for you to start in first if there are a couple of areas that you're not sure of. So I hope that answers your question. What type of assessments? So we've got a mix of assessments. We have some oral presentations. We have essays, but written in journal article styles. So we don't have many just, I guess, standard essays. We might have a critical literature review, a perspective piece, a conversation style article, a Frontiers for Young Minds article, which is a platform that promotes science to young people. So that's one of our youth mental health and neurobiology assignments, is writing for a young audience. So as I said, it's really about, I guess, challenging your science communication. We want to be able to impart this knowledge and research in lots of different ways to a broad audience. So it is a variety. We do have a couple of quizzes that have a mix of multiple choice and very, very short answer questions, like 1 or 2 words. But we don't make you write essays under exam conditions or anything like that. So it's more applied science communication and using that knowledge for particularly your own profession as well. Sometimes the assessments are designed so that you can apply it to your current practice, say, for example, presenting to your cohort. Okay, so I'm all right answering these questions, Dan, but feel free to jump in if you want to, if you want to add anything
Great,
to it.
Chrissy, thank you.
So we have an OT with a specific interest in neurodivergent people, so ASD and ADHD. Is there something I can explore? Yes, absolutely. So yes, we do cover ASD and ADHD. And what we do have in our assessments is a lot of flexibility for you to be able to choose to focus on a particular topic. So what you can do is choose to focus on different mental disorders across the different courses, but also if you wanted to become a specialist and have specialist knowledge in a particular area, then you could align, quite a few of the assessments with a particular disorder. So if you had this interest in ASD or ADHD, then when you have an option to choose a mental disorder for your assessment, you could, keep choosing that same disorder. So you get that really broad knowledge of that specific area. So yes, absolutely, we cover those types of things in detail. Hope that answers that question. Does the course involve or explore metabolic disorders and how they impact mental health? More specifically, the treat metabolic disorder to improve mental health conditions? Not directly, but again, this might be something that we could potentially cover in terms of choosing some of the focus in your assessments. So we don't cover that specifically. In saying that, there is a lot of research coming out in this space, so potentially something that we could be looking to add to our content. But in terms of choosing an assessment focus, we could see whether the metabolic disorders could be a focus for one or more of the assessment items, if that's an area that you wanted to look into. We're very open to
I'll just
discussing
add to that
that.
I guess our starting point is more traditional, terrible word, but the more common mental disorders, psychiatric in particular. But in saying that, looking at metabolic issues in those disorders would be encouraged, and there'd be ways to do that in assessments. And there is increasingly a big overlap between neurological conditions. I said there's another question about that, and psychiatric. I mean, Alzheimer's really is, neurological, I guess, fundamentally. Typically, neurologists will make the diagnoses, but there's mental health aspects to that and metabolic aspects to that as well. So increasingly, this is a very multidisciplinary area, but our starting point is mental disorders.
Thanks, Dan. Okay, next question. I'm a registered nurse and wondering if this course aligns with a postgrad in mental health typically studied by nurses who wish to go on to complete the diploma. So I'm not sure how much our courses would align directly in terms of if you were looking at wanting to receive credit for, say, courses that you did in our course with another course. So that would be a discussion you'd need to have, I guess, with both universities to see how much crossover there is in terms of content and what the requirements are for, I presume it's about getting credit. In terms of their knowledge, I think they would be very complementary. We have a lot of nurses do the course, and actually our courses are hoping to be included in some of our postgraduate courses that are going to be developed over the next couple of years, particularly in nursing as well. So watch this space for that. Completing the courses in the order we presented them on the slides. As I said, there's the semester 1, 4 options, semester 2, 4 options. Really up to you, but very happy to email or chat in other ways to discuss what might be the best pathway for individuals, particularly depending on your background. So yeah, please do email us specifically if you do want some further information on that, but they're designed that you can complete them in any order within the constraints of the 2 semesters. Okay, so curious to whether working long hours or shift work can have an indirect effect on the circadian rhythm and in turn impact sleep and mental health. So I'll start off by saying absolutely, there's a lot of research. Unfortunately, it's not good news for shift workers in terms of obviously the impact on sleep and mental health. Dan, you had a little bit about shift work in your webinar, so do you want to just quickly add to that?
Well, I guess it is a risk factor, isn't it? Because shift work is, by its very nature, changing circadian rhythms. There's a circadian misalignment, and it is very difficult to overcome that. Actually, I think there are ways, but Yeah, so it's a risk factor. It doesn't mean that everybody who does shift work will have certain mental health outcomes. But if you're at risk or you have vulnerability in other regards, risk, doing shift work on top of that may be, increase your risk and so on.
Mm. And I think that's where things like the other lifestyle factors that we talk about in the courses that we know have an effect on brain health and mental health. So it's about kind of balancing some of the other lifestyle factors. If you know your sleep's not great because of shift work, then making sure that I guess you're working on some of those other modifiable factors that can also improve mental health or reduce your risk for mental disorders.
Yeah, and I didn't talk about sleep hygiene and things like that. But, shift workers, especially they do it for a long period of time, they have these techniques. I'm hoping that workplaces that have many shift workers implement this and help people do this. But just picking up on things I mentioned in the masterclass, body temperature, food, it's the timing, having and light, having a cooler, dark room without distractions that you're sleeping in can mitigate these risk factors that you would get in association with your changing sleep-wake patterns that come with shift work.
Thanks. Okay, I'll keep going. We've still got a lot of people listening, so I will keep going with the questions. So one is, are most of the units similar to this? So with slides and the lecturer reading off documents or more interactive discussions? I think the best thing that okay, I'll start that again. You'll be getting a taster module after this webinar with the recording of this webinar, and that taster module will give you a really good idea of what our core concept learning activities will be. So not so much like this. So I just say hold tight till you get the taster module, and that will give you a much better idea of what our modules look like. Then the interactive activities are outside of that, and you can do those in your own time. There are discussion board posts that you can go on to and connect with your peers. I'll ask questions about the content. You can add your discussion points to it. People can respond and reply. So there's that element of it that's also outside of the content. And then there are videos that you can comment on and things like that. So I think get the interactive module, and that will give you a better idea of what a particular module will look like. How long has this course been running? So we started this course, it was great timing, just when COVID hit. So we started the course in semester 2, 2020. We started with our first 2 graduate certificate courses, and we've just been growing, expanding, and going great guns ever since then. So yeah, and the masters is we've been running the grad cert and the grad dip now for that time, but the masters component, so the final part, is new, and that's starting next year. Does the grad cert cover the developing brain or just the youth brain? So we talk do you want to take over? You did a big smile down like you wanted to answer this one.
You start, Christy, please.
So we talk a little bit about the different, I guess, mental disorders across the lifespan. So we do talk about childhood disorders. So there is a little bit about how development of the brain might impact some of those childhood disorders. But from a pure neuroscience perspective, we don't go right to the beginning and go through, the development of the brain, from a fetus brain to, when you're born, and how it goes through up until adolescence. Not in that great detail, but we do offer resources that if you want to nerd out on that, then you absolutely can and get that further information. Dan, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, of course. That's the focus of my research. And one of the modules in the Youth Mental Health and Neurobiology course is dedicated to adolescent brain development, which, relative to other areas is probably under-researched. And so we do go into that in some depth in that module, and, how that relates to the onset of mental disorders that do substantially increase in that adolescent period.
And then, of course, we look at the other end of the spectrum in terms of the age in brain as well. And obviously all the disorders across the lifespan and how that's, I guess, impacted by the changes that happen within the brain. But yeah, not a huge in-depth look at, how a brain develops from day dot. Okay, I'm a play therapist. I've noticed it on the list. Do we cover research on use of play for mental health of children? So we have a look at some of the, I guess, the interventions that from a cognitive perspective, we'll perhaps look at some of those aspects in childhood play. But I guess not specifically in that context, but as I said, it could be something that you could then choose to focus on as an intervention to discuss for a particular childhood disorder. So happy again to have a chat about those types of perspectives in terms of choosing your topics for your assessments. As I said, there's a bit of flexibility there. In this course, do you discuss the intersection of mental health and suicide for people suffering chronic illness? So, for example, chronic fatigue syndrome. So, Dan, do you want to have a chat about that in terms of, I guess, we talk about risk factors for suicide. So, chronic illness can be a risk factor for suicide. But on a side note, we do have a research stream at the TI that's actually looking into chronic fatigue syndrome, particularly at the moment. So Dan, if you want to just do a quick brief about that.
Yeah, that's right, Chrissy. I really should have mentioned that when I was summarizing the TI. Associate Professor Zach Shan at the Thompson Institute specializes in ME CSF, CFS. Getting confused with the acronym in my masterclass. We do try in the program to look at the intersection of mental health and other aspects of that, such as depression and suicide, in a range of conditions, including medical and physical health conditions. So we touch on those things occasionally, but importantly, it is hard to cover everything in great detail, but I really do think that the course gives you the tools and ideas around how it's important to look at these things, in physical health and neurological and other complicated and complex, I should say, brain conditions. Yeah, I hope that answers the question.
Okay, I'm just going to keep going until I get told not to. We've got a few more questions that I'll try and cover. Is there any preliminary reading that I would recommend? I guess if you're unsure of, classification in terms of mental disorders, then reading up on some of the different ways that mental disorders are classified, and not always just through the DSM-5. So have a look at that so you can get an understanding of the different mental disorders that we'll cover. And if your science background is a little less confident or competent, then I would suggest just getting to grips with a little bit of basic neuroanatomy and perhaps neurobiology. And there are some really good, really accessible neuroscience resources online. If you have a good Google, you'll find some really good resources. As I said, 2-Minute Neuroscience is a good one to have a look at. But yeah, in terms of reading, Google Scholar is a great starting point. Type in your areas of interest in terms of mental health and neuroscience, and you should get some good quality. Look for those peer-reviewed journal articles, though, when you're doing your reading.
Well, can I jump ahead to this question about the lymphatic system?
Yes.
Sorry, Chrissy. The question
No, go
is,
for it.
what if one gets woken due to external factors several times a night? Does this affect the lymphatics? I'll be quick on this one. My guess is it would if it happened, on a regular, more chronic basis, because what it would be doing is breaking up the non-REM sleep time, and that's a big. Every 90 minutes, we cycle through stages of sleep into rapid eye movement, which is quite different, fast wave activity, and dreaming behavior. But the bulk of our sleep is non-REM sleep. So if you're getting woken up and disrupted sleep multiple times, there was, some evidence I showed around that, that non-REM sleep seems to be that optimal kind of state for lymphatic system to work. And overall duration of sleep, it seems to be directly related to the impact that the glymphatic system has.
And just a quick note, I think the research shows that we often actually wake up at the end of our sleep cycle, whether we remember it or not. So sometimes that waking up might just be that you're in between sleep cycles and not necessarily detrimental. But, if it's something that you're worried about, it's often, it might be a good idea to go talk to a medical specialist to rule out any other kind of sleep-related disorders like sleep apnea and things like that, to see if there's a reason why you're waking up. Okay. Any content on the impact of hormone changes on brain health during perimenopause? Very interesting topic, one that I'm getting into a lot recently for various reasons. As I said, I think this is probably something that you could incorporate into an assessment topic choice potentially. We know that there are effects, hormonal changes that do affect the brain across the lifespan for women, particularly during this perimenopause and menopausal stage. And we know that that can increase the risk for things like depression and anxiety and other mental disorders. So in terms of that life stage increasing vulnerability to things like mental disorders, then we can, it's definitely a vulnerable population that could be focused on in an assessment item type thing. So I hope that answers that. Dan, this one I think is for you in terms of the use of the old DSM-Speak. So it sounds like the course is aimed at understanding the neurological function in the Axis 1 type, old DSM-Speak mental disorders.
Yep, that's
the questions.
that's probably an accurate summary of what we focus on, the Axis, what was once called Axis 1 disorders. But we expand on that as well. Comorbidity as well, I think, is important. But I'll take the opportunity to speak to the nosological system, that is the DSM. And we have some content looking at classification systems that are used in mental disorder diagnoses and psychiatry. So we actually have content specifically looking at how the DSM and that is the Diagnostic Statistical Manual for Mental Disorders, from the American Psychiatric Association, and how that's evolved over the decades, with the International Classification for Disease, which has mental disorders in that as well, plus new systems like one called HiTOP, which is a hierarchical taxonomy of psychopathology. A lot of big words there in terms, but the point is that there are different systems used to classify different mental disorders, and that has impact on public health and hospitals and individual patients and prescriptions and medication and so on. And all the while, researchers are trying to really figure out whether we're comparing apples and oranges, or whether, or how transdiagnostic we should go and so on. So that's a really important point too. The field's very much moving into looking at a whole service, for example, or a larger population, rather than just looking at a particular diagnosis, and even excluding people with complicated comorbidities, which I said before is well, I didn't say this, but it's the rule rather than the exception. And there's new approaches to the way that we're looking at mental disorders that are less DSM than we used to be.
Thanks, Dan. And I guess I'll add to that in terms of if people want to get ahead with their reading, you could have a look at the literature that talks about the HiTOP, like Dan suggested. And there's another, I guess, tool that we look at, which is the Research Domain Criteria, or the RDoC. And yeah, that's got a lot of interesting information around that. There's a really useful website you can have a look at that will tell you all about that. And then the other one that spoiler alert, we look at is called the Clinical Staging Models. So if any of you want to get ahead with your readings, then have a look at those types of things. We cover those in MHN 701, which is the translational research component. And we talk about the differences between those diagnostic tools, and I guess some of the criticisms and the strengths as well. So okay, I think we are almost done. Do we look at the neurological basis of evidence-based treatments in mental health issues and psychological disorders? So interventions like MBCT, EMDR, FLASH. Yes, absolutely. We do have a look at those types of interventions in our stress-related disorders course. We look at the current and I guess more traditional treatment approaches to PTSD. But we also are looking at the newer, more novel interventions like FLASH technique. We actually have someone, a PhD candidate at the TI looking into the neurobiological underpinnings of FLASH technique. So again, watch this space. And also other novel treatments, as we said, like ketamine and other psychedelic drugs. So yes, look at those things. How soon can the grad cert be completed? So the grad cert is offered currently part-time. So we've got the 2 courses in semester 1 and 2 in semester 2. Hopefully down the track, we'll be able to offer that all in one semester, but currently that's the way we can offer that at the moment. I think we're almost there. Are we? Did I miss one? Oh, one last question. I work with women, domestic violence survivors. Can I focus on traumatic brain injuries and mental health through some of my science? Absolutely. Yes, there will definitely be opportunity for discussing certain vulnerable populations within our assessment items. So yeah, that's the quick version to that. All right, Dan, I'll hand over to you to officially end the session.
Thanks, Chrissy. Yes, we should wrap things up. Well, what do I say? Thank you. I'm thinking about the changing light, dark cues in my own office where I am right now, and the impact that is having on me. I hope you all enjoyed this masterclass, a wonderful overview of the program and eligibility and the course content from Chrissy. And I hope you also enjoyed the masterclass, which was, our way of giving you a sample of what we do in this mental health and neuroscience program. We very much look at the intersection between mental health disorders and issues and the neuroscience that informs that. And the questions were great. That's the best part for us. Thank you for sticking around and asking so many wonderful questions. We really could keep going, but we should stop things there. So that's all from me on behalf of Chrissy and everyone in the team, UniSC and the Thompson Institute at UniSC. Thank you once again, and enjoy the rest of your day, wherever in the world you are. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. And applications for semester 1 are open.